Hi, this is Lonnie. This is a teaser or a trailer, if you will. So come on out this Sunday for the rest of the story at Breath of Life Church, 10 o'clock Sunday morning. It's at 65 23rd Street in East Wenatchee. You know, Jesus used practical examples to teach spiritual truth. This is a pilot's license. It can be acquired with a minimum of 40 hours flight time and a very brief ground school course. It almost seems silly that the government would issue you a license that allows you to crawl into an aircraft and fly anywhere you want with such a small amount of time. Not only you, but you can take someone with you anywhere you want. You can have their lives in your hands. But I'll be straight up, I didn't get my pilot's license in only 40 hours of flight time. I started ground school, or started the process 3 times, and twice I got derailed. But on a positive note, starting any course over has some good points, and the most obvious that you've seen the material before, and it's easier to digest and easier to move forward. It's really a pretty intense amount of learning and flying skills that are built in a short amount of time. You are finely tuned and you're ready for that check ride with a designated examiner. But if you, for some reason, don't take that opportunity to do that and you slack off on the books, you may as well start over. But my main point is that with a very small amount of training, you are given a huge responsibility. Remember that point, because I'm going to come back to it. I bought a 1958 172, a Cessna, 4-passenger high-wing airplane. I loved it. It was great. It had the old straight tail on it, had manual flaps. You could reach down and grab that bar, that flap bar, and pull in 40 degrees of flaps, feel like you were putting the brakes on. It was wonderful. You come down and land like a feather. At that time, I had a hangar on Concrete Airport over on the other side of the Cascades. Back in 1995, I was going to fly down and pick up my daughter down in Oregon. In planning a flight, it's quite complicated. You don't just go hop in your airplane and take off unless you ignore everything you've learned in ground school. But you got to plot your course. And plotting a course, time will not allow me to cover all the details of a flight plan, but for the sake of this, I will include enough detail that you'll be able to make correlations when we switch from talking about flying an aircraft to living your life in Christ. The things that you need to factor in when you're filing a flight plan or making ready to do that is the weather, the wind, the barometric pressure, the temperature, the density, altitude, the weight and balance, the fuel needed. Do you have enough to get to where you need, plus the additional in case you need to fly a little further? Mandatory that you have a little extra. Alternate airports, facilities available, winds aloft. What's it going to be like up there? Magnetic variation, depending on where you are on the face of the planet. You've got to plug in different numbers. It's the elevation of things that you're going to have to fly over. There's a lot of details. But once you put them all together, not just the avionics and not just the things that you're going to encounter when you're flying, but the numbers. When you put all the numbers together, your magnetic variation, where you want to go, the deviations and the things, the most important thing you come up with is your compass heading. It's that little line on the compass indicator tells you you're going at 265 degrees. That's it. So once you've done all your work correctly, you follow that number and you will get to your destination. You see, no matter how complex the aircraft, no matter how many slick bells and whistles it has mandatory, regulated, set in stone. There must be a standalone, good old-fashioned magnetic compass in the cockpit. Because when the lights go out, the compass still works. When the computer glitches or shuts down, the compass still works. When the battery is dead, the compass still works. At the end of the day, after you tie the aircraft down and you walk away, the compass is still doing its job. Well, I'd done all my preliminary flight plan. I was fueled up with enough to get me to the airport at Chelan and the required additional few gallons, allowing for 30 minutes flying time if need be. And flying across the Cascades, it's no small feat. It's not something to be taken lightly. There's a lot of ground to cover where there will be no emergency landing strips, no good alternatives. Most of it is just wilderness. You need to know certain maneuvers that could help you exit a box canyon should you end up in one. The winds in the mountains are like water going over rocks that create rapids. It's very dangerous. Have you ever seen a lenticular cloud on the leeward side of a mountain? That's that cloud that looks like a lens. That's a warning to pilots. It's saying, hey, stay away, because there are some rough turbulence right here. Flip your airplane upside down, spin you around, and spit you out. After losing my own father in a plane crash in the mountains, I had a heightened sense of danger. So spiritual lesson number 1. When we see others fail, we can pick up unwarranted fear in our own lives. But perfect love casts out fear. I took off and headed from concrete. Not long after that, I was at approximately 10,000 feet, beholding what has to be one of the most beautiful sights in the world, the Cascade Mountains, from a bird's eye perspective. I checked my compass. I was on course as I entered the narrowing valley leading me and my aircraft into the North Cascade Mountain Range. I was looking down at what was identified on my chart as Cascade Mountain Pass. And I'm not talking about the pass on Highway 20. I'm talking about a place up the Cascade watershed. If you follow the Cascade River from Marble Mount easterly until you run out of road, then there's a trail that if you hike will take you up and over Cascade Pass, which then descends down into Steeken if you were on the ground. I wasn't on the ground. I was closer to 10,000 feet. I was looking down at the saddle on top of the mountain. And then I looked at my compass heading, the one that I'd spent hours to perfect. And as I peered down at the saddle, I surmised that I must be off course just a smidge, just a couple degrees, because surely that lower portion of the mountain top was really the pass. There wasn't any real wind at that time. It was pushing me off course. I knew my calculations were correct. They were checked and double-checked and checked again. But that uncertainty kept nagging at me. And I wanted to believe what I wanted to believe and not my compass. That I wanted to believe that low point, that had to be the mountain pass. And I made a very slight deviation from my compass heading to adjust my flight path to go directly over what I surmised was Cascade Pass. It was just a couple degrees to begin with. But what began as a couple degrees turned into a major course deviation. Our galaxy is about 100,000 light years across. And if a spaceship were to make a slight deviation while flying from our little solar system, when they reached the other side of the galaxy, they would be light years off of course. And like me, I was now being routed by the canyon walls. The mountains were two walls of a long hallway that was leading me to where I did not know. They were not going to move for me. I was the one moving for them. Lesson number 2. When God gives you a course heading and you deviate from it, other forces will enter into your life that seem to take charge over your life. My easterly course became east-southeast, and then southeast turned into south, and south turned into southwest until I was flying west directly opposite of the flight of the path that I had set out on. I ended up over Darrington, a place that I knew, and I determined at that point to head back to Concrete Airport. And once over Concrete, I looked east back at the Cascade watershed. I looked at my fuel gauge and surmised that I probably had enough remaining fuel to reach Chelan, although I had just burned up my reserve. Come on out or tune in on Sunday morning. You can watch online to get the rest of the story, or you can come out in person. The Breath of Life Church is at 65 23rd Street there in East Wenatchee. You can find us on the web too. You can tune in and watch the live stream at bolwenatchee.org. Hope to see you there. God bless.